Hey, what up, dudes? Alright, so issue had been dealing with my computer turning off randomly, suddenly. Pretty certain I narrowed it down. I actually thought it was the PSU, which was wrong. Um, yeah, so I went and bought a new PSU from Best Buy and installed it, and that's not actually the problem. I should have known better because I actually had looked it up, um, like my symptoms and stuff, and it suggested that it was not PSU related, that it was more likely associated with like Windows, um, my my hard drive or something like that. But for whatever reason, I went and got a new PSU anyway, installed it, um, and it didn't fix the problem. So my PSU was like 12 and a half years old. It's like really old, but it's kind of like, if it's not broke, don't fix it type thing. I have seen ChatGPT specifically told me there's some people have had their PSUs last for 16 years. So like mine's probably about, I don't know, 10 to 12 years. Um, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I'm like, should I just go ahead and replace it? Like, keep the replacement? I'm going to bring the one I got back because it's not the one that I wanted. I just got one that I could get just to test it. I have like 15 days to return it. Um, I don't know. I'm like debating on whether or not I should just put back in my old one and keep it, or if I should go ahead and, like, take it as a sign to just go ahead and get a new one, since I realized it is a dinosaur. It is like 12 and a half years old. It's at least 10, 11 years old. I did read about a guy had his for like 16 years though. So theoretically, it could be good for another like 4 years. So I'd really hate to replace something that would be good for another 4 years, right? That's just, you know, if it's going to be good for another 4 years, why would I? Why would I replace it? Looks like my. There we go. I don't know. I'm like debating on whether or not I should just put back in my old one and keep it, or if I should go ahead and. Okay, volume's working. That's cool. So just wanted to check that. Yeah. So currently we're debating what we're gonna do here. Are we gonna keep the get a new PSU, or are we gonna try and squeeze out every last little bit from the old one? I don't know. We'll see. But I ended up figuring out what the actual problem was. I think it was I updated Windows recently, which I hadn't done in like a long time, and I had to do like check disk and run some stuff in the command prompt, and it's been stable since then, but that was like just a few hours ago. So it worked last night for like 3 hours straight and then died. So it might not actually be fixed. I might just think that it's fixed. So if it does mess up again, the most likely culprit I think is going to be my SSD, one of my SSDs, probably the one that has Windows on it. So anyway, my back is totally still jacked up. I haven't done like anything this weekend at all, and it's like really bad, pinched nerve or whatever. So I had to take my medication. I don't like taking my medication. It makes me like drowsy and just I don't like it. But sometimes that's what you gotta do. Okay, so let's see what we can do as far as picking up where we left off. Hopefully it doesn't just abruptly shut off. If it does, that means I still have this problem with the computer, and it's not going to go away until it's fixed, obviously. It'll just cut off. It shuts down with no warning. Alright, but not yesterday, day before that, we actually finished adding all the code that I think we needed to add for the reconnect system as far as like the client token and stuff. Let's see exactly what we did. So we continued working on code to reconnect the client. We worked in server file. We finished adding code to handle reassigning the new con object to self-con12 and other con namespace from the other thread as well. We reviewed all that. It looked great. We added code in the same file, creating the client ID client token dictionary for authenticating the client when they reconnect. And then we added code in server, populating the server client ID client token dictionary at the time of creation to populate that dictionary with the original client tokens. And then we stopped at line 770 in server. So let's hop over there and see what we got here. Okay, so it says this means the tokens didn't match. Honestly, not sure what we should do at this point, leaving this caution comment to revisit eventually. And we stopped right here. So let's just look at this section real quick. So this is in the case where they have hit an exception, a connection related exception, meaning that the client got disconnected, either connection refused error, connection aborted error, connection reset error, or a timeout error. In this case, we log it, then we create a new connection by accepting using the reconnect socket, and this reconnect socket is gonna block, this function will block until the client reconnects. Once they do reconnect, perhaps we should have a timeout thing here. I'm honestly just not sure, dude. Like, I feel like we need a timeout, but I don't know. I don't know if we should have a timeout here, because there's gonna eventually be like a point in time where we're gonna make the determination that the client is like not coming back, right? And then we basically give the other person a free win once, you know, that means like the player forfeited. If they disconnect, we give them a certain amount of time. I guess we would say like 5 minutes or something like that, maybe. And if they haven't returned within that 5 minutes, then they forfeit the game. So I guess we should probably add something in here. Does accept work like that? Let's see. So does socket accept? Well, first of all, we'll add this to things to do, because it is something that we're gonna need to do eventually, and I don't think that's in my to-do list. So we'll say trigger game forfeit in, let's see, add code in server pi, and this is server side code, right? Add server side code in server pi to trigger game forfeit if no reconnect in I would say 5 minutes. So if it's been if it has been, well, let's be specific here. We have a framework for how we structure this. So we say add code. We don't have to repeat ourselves though. That's dumb, right? So we'll say if the DC'd client hasn't reconnected in 5 minutes, trigger a forfeit and give the other client a win. And would probably have to do with code in we'll say threaded client accept section, which handles reconnect, specifically the reconnect socket dot accept. Yeah. So we have to ensure this ends the game and gives the other client their proper winning output slash explanation. Okay. Cool. And let's ask ChatGPT, does it actually work like that? Let's see. Does it work? What is this? It's I've never saw that before. So we'll say Python socket dot accept has timeout. And you can just speak to it like a caveman, because basically I am a caveman, you know, in its eyes. So you just talk to it like a caveman, and yeah. Yes, Python socket accept can have a timeout if you set one using socket set timeout on the listening socket. So you do bind listen server socket set timeout 5 seconds. So it's in terms of seconds. Then we do try and then accept socket timeout, no incoming connection within a timeout period. And then finally, we will behavior set timeout applies to blocking operations like accept and receive. No client connects within a timeout or raises a socket timeout exception. You can catch it and proceed without freezing your server indefinitely. More flexible, scalable, consider using selectors, async IO, or threads. Okay, what do I need from it? Well, yeah, we just set, so we set the set timeout on the socket in terms of seconds. So let's see here. Seconds. So say set the reconnect socket, set timeout seconds to trigger this. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll say, all right, so we'll add to do here. It's going to be to do add code, which sets timeout to 5 minutes for reconnect socket. If DC client hasn't reconnected by then, game is forfeited and other client wins. To do it like this, to do. Alright, and then what else do we need? Let's come right here, and we'll do to do 8325 code set. No, we don't want to add code which triggers game forfeit in this case, in case of 5-minute DC. And then we need to add code which triggers game win for other client in case of 5-minute DC. So that's all the specific code that needs to be added. It might not need to be added here, but it does need to be added. So let's go ahead and add this timeout. So we'll say self dot reconnect socket dot set timeout, and we're gonna set it in terms of seconds. So 60 times 5 is 300, right? So we do 300, and just to verify that verify param is seconds. Is seconds. It can be float. So 5 2.5. Gotcha. So we'll just do 300. 300 seconds equals 5 minutes, right? Yeah, 60 times 5, 300. Okay. So self.reconnect socket dot set timeout to 300. Sets time out to 5 minutes. If haven't reconnected by this time, game is forfeited. And other client wins. Cool. Alright, so we added that code there. We already did that, so we can get rid of this. So let's rephrase this. Yeah, we can leave that as it is. Alright. Add code which triggers a game forfeit in case if I'm in a DC. Add code which triggers game win. So server runs. So we would say if this was player. Let me think. How does this work exactly? So this is outside of the. This would be outside of the game loop. This is like exited the game loop. So normally we would be operating from, let's see. So we have individual game. Where does the draw one get called? Here it is. So we would try, create the server, accept connection, start threads, then the draw one, it starts. And then we have accept in the main thread. But this is only if the main thread hits an exception. We are actually... Wait, this isn't in the main thread at all, is it? Yeah, this is not the main thread anymore. This exists in the context of individual client, individual game. So this is each game has 2 threads. So wait, is this the main thread? Yeah, okay, so we have the 3 threads running, right? Yeah, so this is the main thread. The main thread runs the draw one. It runs the main game loop in progression. And then we have the 2 client threads, which basically just constantly sends and receives data. But in the case that one of the clients disconnects, well, that wouldn't cause an exception in the main thread. That would not trigger an exception in the main thread. That would only trigger the exception in the client thread. So this would still be running. But we would have to like I don't necessarily know that we need to modify this section to do what we want to do. This could still technically just like be running in the background. Like organizationally or whatever you want to call it, like it should probably like end or something at the point in which the forfeit occurred. But like ultimately this draw 1 thread that progresses the game is just gonna be terminated like after we set the proper data. And setting the data to basically notify the player that the disconnected client hasn't gotten back on and they forfeited the game, therefore that player wins, that could just all be handled in the client thread, the client that's still available. So yeah, I think that's the proper way to take care of that. We would so this doesn't really need to be modified right here, but we do need to modify the client thread, and this would happen, I guess, at this exception point. Like we could have it all happen here, I suppose, without like rerouting back to a different section. I don't know, because we do need to send. We do need to send them the data, but not from this. Not from this client thread, because this is the disconnected client thread. We actually need the other client thread to handle that. So how do we do that? How do we, from this thread, we just added code for that actually, like a similar thing. We added the code last session where after they reconnect, we modify conlock, or I'm sorry, we modify the con1 or con2 adder to refer to the proper client, the new con object rather, so that the other thread will reassign its other con namespace to refer to this new con1 or con2 adder to properly reference this new con object. So basically we could use the same methodology, which would be having an attribute to refer to, like, you know, the fact that the client is forfeited the game, and that would get checked on the other client thread. That would be a shared object. That means we would have to lock that object, and that would allow us to yeah, on the other thread we would check it. So here we will trigger the shared boolean with a lock. So let's add that. We'll say create, we'll call it other client forfeit bool, And then we need to we'll say create server.other client forfeit bool adder. And then we will trigger bool adder, or rather we'll just say set to false equal to, or to true. And then we would have other thread check adder every iteration of main while loop. And then if it's equal to true, and then we'll say if it is equal to true, then we want to send, or well, we need to trigger game win function, like, because we have yeah, I mean, there's no reason that we couldn't do that, right? Like, we can just summon the function from the progression. So we would trigger game win function from progression pi, right? So we'd call game win function from progression pi to set proper data points. But before that, we need to, well, we could probably modify that function. Call game win function. Say this function needs to be modified. That we'll say game win function needs to be modified to include forfeit arg. So we'll just say forfeit arg if equal to true. Modify output to inform them other client forfeited. Yeah. Server the client variable is equal to true. Call game win function from progression pi to set proper data points. Game win function needs to be modified to include forfeit arg if equal to true. Modify output to inform other client forfeited. And we will note that this this function needs to exist anyway. In that regard, for if client willfully forfeits by manually quitting the game. This is a completely different scenario. So we'll add that to things to do, because that's something that's going to need to be done. So let's see here. So this code here. Add server-side code in server pi, or rather in progression, to modify, what's the name of this function here? So let's open up progression and see if we can find this. So it's winner output. Sorry, you lost. Da, 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 da. Or maybe we should just... Maybe we just need to create a completely different function. Because this is... Yeah, we'd probably just create a new function, I think. Because modifying this one is weird. That would be weird. Yeah, I think that's the way that we would do this. Let's see. Let's go over here. Server is equal to true. Call. We'll call it other client forfeit function. So we're going to say other client forfeit func to set proper data. And say I think you see modified to include blah 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 blah. So yeah, we need to create that function. Create in progression by to set proper data points. this like really bad. Alright. Okay, so now if the threaded client disconnects, we try to reconnect him. We first set the reconnect socket timeout to 300 seconds. If they haven't reconnected by this time, when we try to do that, calling accept, it enters into this exception. It raises the accept socket.timeout, which will trigger self other client forfeit bool equal to true, and that will well, it needs to be reset back to false too, right? Yeah, it needs to be reset back to false. Doesn't need to be reset back to false at this point in time. I feel like either way, we're gonna have to have, which I don't think we have this yet, like code that handles the termination, the clean exit of the like the clean exiting of the game. You know what I mean? Like when it ends, like this while loop, this thread would never get terminated. It would just always be in this while loop even after the game ended. Like we need to like terminate the main while loop and to terminate the thread. Well, yeah, because currently we don't have a way. Like, if they wanted to play another game against someone else, well, we would have to like reroute them, right, back to the main process or whatever, to reconnect to a new game, or however that would work. Yeah, so see, while true. All right, so we're gonna have to add that code. So we'll just put when do we reset other client forfeit bool back to false? Should we at all? Should this section trigger yeah, so let's see. Put this up here and we'll say add code to trigger the end of this game if the receive verification has been received after sending client final data after other client forfeit bool section has been run. And that data has been sent to this, yes. Implies clean exit of this threaded client. Implies clean exit of the game child process. Alright, so at the beginning of the main while loop, we check to see if other client forfeit bool is equal to true. If it is, then we check if client number is equal to 1. We then call other client forfeit func passing p1, which would call this function with the winning player winning player ID is equal to 1, then other player is equal to P2, else other player is equal to P1. That's right. Now game, assign game, passing in winning player. If game ID is equal to 1, other game is P2, else other game is P1 game. Then we say fresh text assign function, congratulations, winning player dot name. It looks as if the other player has forfeited the match, you win. Then we pass the game next func string EC for enter continue. Then we do game progression text assign function. Your final score was winning player dot total score, and other player dot names final score was other player dot total score. Then pass game other game next func string EC. So this one goes, yeah, okay, well, we wouldn't actually send this to the other client, would we? So this would only use 1. We wouldn't put other game, because that sends it to the other game, right? Yeah, in this case we would just do like that. And this will only send it to, your final score was winning player dot total score, and other player dot names final score was other player dot total score. Then we say game next func string EC. Okay, and then if client number is equal to 2, we call the same function passing in P2, and then then we just go about our normal procedure, sending and receiving the data. That will overwrite so the cars and everything will be like in their final locations, etc., etc. Blah blah blah. We don't need anything flashy or fancy. That's just and that's going to send the data to the client, and then eventually we have to add code to trigger the end of the game after we receive the receive verification. So is that 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. So then we go down here to 750-ish. So if they don't connect in time, we set that other client forfeitable equal to true, and this will triggers other client thread to detect this. Yeah, very straightforward. So accept socket.timeout, and then self.other client variable is equal to true. Okay, cool. That's our try right there. Wait 5 minutes for client to reconnect. When reconnect notifies the client that this client forfeited the game. Pretty straightforward there. Create other client forward proper output. Okay, we did that. And then ensure data transfer happens in this case to send new winning data to client. Verify client received from these rings for terminating game SS process. Let's say ensure data transfer happens after above section is run whenever they don't reconnect. Yep, and then add code which triggers game end relative to server-side understanding in case if I'm in DCAK for the game process, etc. cleanly. Alright, and then we have if client num is equal to 1. This is if they do reconnect. Then we use conlock to set selfcon 1, and then header amount, we receive the client token, verify, we get that client token and the client ID. We look up the client ID and the token from that received client ID. If the two tokens match, we don't do anything at all. It just enters right back in and starts data transfer as normal. I think that should work. I'll just put a note here and say 8325 in case the received client token did match. It should just re-enter the main while loop and continue data exchange regular loop functionality with the new con object, right? Or do we have to add code that's going to, well, this is an exception, so is this exception for the main while loop? So we have to get them to enter back into the main while loop because we did hit an exception. Or is that a separate loop? Do we need a loop within the main while loop? How does this work exactly? Let's see here. So this is going to be our try, and then there's the main while loop. So we try while true, then if we hit an exception, it will go all the way down here and hit this except. So we actually do need to add code to re-enter them into the main while loop somehow. Yeah, so we had except and sure. Okay, so we do need to take care of that. Except. Wait a second. Oh, that's all none. Okay, and then we say in case she's going did match, it should turn true with me. Object right now, so we have to add this to do. So we'll say to do 8325 add code which re-enters the main while loop since in the case that the received client token did match the original one. Yeah, good catch there. Almost missed that, and then we're gonna go ahead and we will stop here. All right, 802 in server. We stopped at line number 802 in server pi. Alright, so we did work on that again, but it's part 19. The time, continue working server, specific task list. Well, we did work and progression. And specific task list, we'll say specific we dot. Reviewed, well, let's see. Reviewed last session's code. Added code in server pi to let's see. Added code in server pi to forfeit the game in the case that the DC client has not reconnected within 5 minutes. And then we'll say add code to call progression dot other client forfeit func in this case to notify winning player. Added code and progression pi creating the to run to set proper player data associated with game forfeit, and then we reviewed the code. All added code. Everything looks great. Alright, and there we go. So we went all the way to 3:42. That's an hour and a half. So let's say 1.5 here. Stage. Alright, so let's review reconnect logic and server pi part 20. It's actually supposed to be 19. I don't know how I messed that up again. Let's try that one more time. 8325, 216, 342 is 1.5 hours. That's correct. Continued working on code which will reconnect the client to the proper game. Mainly worked in server pi and progression pi. Specifically reviewed that session code. Added code server to forfeit the game in the case the DC client has not reconnected within 5 minutes. Added code and server body call progression other client forfeit function. In this case, identify winning player. Added code and progression by creating the progression other client forfeit function. Set proper player data associated with game forfeit. Reviewed all added code. Everything looks great. Stopped line 802 server pi. That is correct. And then yeah, and then stage commit push changes, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Copy, make sure we're at the root project, which we are, the directory, git branch, make sure we're on the right branch, we are, git add to stage everything, git commit -m, double quotes, paste, double quotes to enter the devlog, commit, 4 files changed, 72 insertions, 15 deletions. Now we're going to do git push to push up to the remote GitHub repository. And there we go. It has pushed to that branch, and we can go ahead and let's go to things to do here. We have review, reconnect to game, client server logic prior to test. That's not actually all we have to do, right? We have to also add code, server-side code, in server.py, which triggers clean game sub-process, exit, etc. Yeah, that's right. So 8325. After game ends, either by forfeit or regular win, trigger clean exit of game subprocess and client threads. Or maybe not threads if they, well, client threads. We'll say redirect clients back to main process to play another game. Back to main process or lobby. That's going to be another task altogether. Say add server-side code in server by which triggers clean. Let's see, reroutes clients back to lobby. Redirect clients back to main process lobby to play another game after game ends. This is after game ends, either by forfeit regular trigger, clean exit game start processing client threads. Yep, and then we also have to add server-side code. We'll do that first. To re-enter main while loop. After client reconnect. After client reconnects. Get the threaded client back into the main while loop. Let's see, line number 801. And server. Alright. Yep. Alright, so that's about it. This will probably take us like 15 minutes. This is going to be triggers, clean game subprocess, exit. That's probably going to take us about an hour, something like that, maybe 30 minutes. We'll say 30 minutes. And then this one is going to be reroutes client back to lobby. That's another hour. So we'll say about 2 hours and 15 minutes. Technically, we don't need to we don't need to have this done until after we test the systems. We want to test the systems right first, so let's get rid of that and we'll test the system. We don't want to add any code that we don't have to add, and we can test the system. What the fuck is this? To modify. Other client forfeit function. Alright, there we go. We're done. Yep, so you're looking at about, really, this is just 15 minutes. And then we're going to do a quick review. That'll probably be about 30 minutes. So that's about 45 minutes. And then we're going to test the system. So that's it. Next session, we're going to do a game test for the first time in 4 months. Yep. We did it. Alright, dudes. Well, that's going to be it. Really good progress. Pretty happy. Back hurts so bad. Honestly, I don't think I'm going to be able to go to work tomorrow. I'm probably going to have to take a couple days off for this, at least a day. It's like a pinched nerve. I've had this happen before a couple times. It's like so severe. It's very bad. Wouldn't wish it on anyone, but thankfully I do have pain medication for the rare emergency case when this does happen. I don't like taking it, but you know, it's better than sitting here like gritting my teeth, feeling like I need to go to the ER, because that's a pointless, miserable experience. Don't go to the ER unless you're like literally dying or something. Yeah, so anyway, should be able to get some coding in on the bright side, so we'll be able to test that stuff. Next session, finally here, test time, and man, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be nice to crank up the actual game for the first time in about 4 months. It's a long time. What's that? 120 days. First time we're going to be cranking up the server and the client in 120 days tomorrow. Technically, I mean, I could do it today, actually. I didn't realize how early it was. It's not even 4. I really don't feel great because of my back pain, and the pain medicine makes me kind of like lethargic, and I just honestly don't feel great. You know what I mean? It's kind of like not in the mood. But I really probably should. I should, be productive. I don't know. I have some other things I need to take care of, so we'll see. We shall see. If I come back, we'll test today. If not, we'll do it tomorrow, unless something crazy happens. So, anyway, guys, I'm gonna go eat, and we'll see after that. So,